Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Rage Afterlifelines, out March 29th on Steam Hammer SPV. The album has 21 songs, 87 minutes in length, and this is the band's 26th full-length studio album. They are a German heavy metal band. And yes, you heard me right, 21 songs, 87 minutes. That's because this is a double album. The first album is called Afterlife, and it has 11 songs and it's 41 minutes. And the second one is called Lifelines, and that one has 10 songs and 46 minutes. A lot of music to digest. So how did they put all of this together? Well, first of all, there's a little bit of a theme that runs through both records. I wouldn't go as far as to say a concept, but you could use that term loosely to describe what this record is all about. It's in some ways a continuation of where the last album left off, or at least it goes with that same similar theme. This one takes you more into perhaps a post-apocalyptic world that you could see the damage that we have done as humans, not just to ourselves but to the world around us. So it allows you to reflect, but it also has a very dark underbelly as far as the mood and the experience of the album. Now, this is an album that, due to its nature of being two records, 21 songs, 87 minutes, it has to have the right dynamics in order to be engaging for this long of a period of time for these many songs. And I feel like the albums, both of them, are very balanced and very similar in terms of the overall approach. There are some uniquenesses within the design, but those uniquenesses is to enhance the ability of both records working as one. And what I mean by that is that the first album, Afterlife, has an intro track that introduces you to the record, introduces you to the experience, but it also introduces you technically to Afterlifelines, which is both albums together. And then the second record, Lifelines, has an outro track that gives you a sense of finale. So you don't get a beginning and ending with each one, you get a beginning and ending with both of them together. It's a nice dynamic, it's an interesting approach that allows the fluidity of the tracks to be enhanced. This album is a roller coaster ride from beginning to end. I don't think you can make an album this long with these many songs, or double album if you will, and not have that dynamic approach. If all the songs sounded or felt very similar, it would start to become mundane and repetitive, and it's not the case. Alternating a more power metal song with a more classic heavy metal song, then putting a softer track, almost like a ballad, in order for the album to breathe a little bit better, but also for the listener to take a break, then coming back with a power metal song, then after that another more classic heavy metal track. There's a lot of different influences, and they're all coming across in a balanced way, but in a very dynamic way as well, which makes the overall design and the overall experience really captivating and really engaging. Where you start to see the differences, first and foremost, is in the sound. You can't compare the sound of the first album with the sound of the second album. The main difference is the second album has a lot of orchestrations in it. It's built differently. It's built from a sound perspective a lot more modern. The first record doesn't have it, and it feels more organic, it feels more raw, it's more rock and roll. It's really about bass, drums, guitars, and vocals. That's it. No fillers, no additional elements, no keyboards, no synthesizers, just really pure rock and roll at its purest form, and then what comes from it with the influences of the band, with speed metal, power metal, classic heavy metal, all of that coming in and really dictating where you're gonna go. But the sound of that first record sounds alive, and it sounds live. It has that live atmosphere to it because it has that organic factor of being just the core elements of the band coming across and providing the full brunt of its own experience. The second record, like I mentioned, with the orchestrations, you start to move into a more cinematic realm, more theatrical. The songs obviously become bigger. They start to get more volume, and by more volume I don't mean that they get heavier, they just get larger in size. You start to see more depth, you start to see a lot more textures, because there's obviously a lot more layers into the sound experience and into the overall soundscape. So it's a more worked record from that standpoint, is a more studio album from that standpoint, and with a cinematic and theatrical vibe that it has, carries well and it impacts well the lyrical content, because you're able to see a darker side of of the lyrical content and of what the stories, of what the songs, the messages I should say, are trying to portray, but because of the cinematic value of it, it almost becomes a pseudo documentary. While the first half, or I would say the first album, because of its nature, because of not having those orchestrations and being just bare bones, it feels more raw, and because it feels more raw, it also feels a little bit more darker. It feels a little bit more intense. There's an organic aggression that comes from taking that approach when recording a record, specifically when you have an album with these themes and with this kind of lyrical content behind it. So these are the main differences between both, and you notice them immediately. So it's easy to move from one to the other, but the experiences that you get is going to be completely different, and I think you're going to get something completely different also out of both of them. It's an interesting approach that allows the band to offer you an overall arching theme, but then provide you with two different experiences depending on which record you're currently on. Outside of that overall sound experience, I honestly really enjoy the guitar sound and the drums on this album. Specifically when it comes to the guitars, they felt like they had a lot of life. They were vibrant, they were light, they were heavy, they were driven, they were melodic, and oftentimes they were dark. They had thickness, they were more driven. The ebbs and flows, the roller coaster ride of sound, more often than not, is really ignited by what the guitars are doing. But regardless of what they are doing, regardless of the experience that they are offering, the sound behind it was really good. It had energy. It wasn't overproduced. It found a fine line between a live setting or a live studio recording, if you will, which you see that more on the first album, with a more polished but not overly worked sound on the second one, because obviously the orchestrations are going to have an impact on your overall experience, and they're going to have an impact on the guitars, either you like it or you don't. But overall, the guitar sound is really magnificent. Great solos, great melodies, a lot of hooks, a lot of great musical hooks coming from the guitars on these songs, really helping enhance some of the choruses on these tracks, which and most often than not are really the element that's going to come and bring you back to those songs because of the hookiness and the catchiness that it has. The drums all around felt like they had, I wouldn't say, I think probably the good word to say is substance. They had oomph. They felt full. Not to say that they were overly heavy, or not to say that they were overpowering, because I never felt like they were. But the sound of the drums really traveled well from if you're listening to it on headphones, from one side to the other. There's movement within the drum sound. They're not just coming at you always in the same surface. No, they're moving around. The sound is moving. The sound has movement, and that to me is important, because if you don't have a substantial heavy sound, having that movement adds to the experience and makes the heavier tracks feel heavier, but at the same time it dilutes some of the softer tracks, allowing the drums to still have an impact, to still have that oomph, but not overpowering the mood and the sound that's creating that same mood. Now vocally, PV is phenomenal. Like his raspiness, his tone of voice, for a record that has this dark underbelly to it, that has this menacing and perhaps even a little bit of a prophetic style approach as far as lyrics are concerned, his vocal delivery is on point. That raspiness, that tone of voice allows you to feel the lyrics a little bit more, allows you to feel the message a little bit more. And the funny thing about it is that it adds heaviness, it adds impact to the more driven songs, to the songs that have a little bit more thickness on the guitar side, but it also adds a sense of being powerless to the songs that are a little bit softer, that have a little bit more of a ballad style. So his vocal approach on these lyrical themes works really well regardless of the sound behind them, and that was a consistent element throughout. And it's amazing that a band that's been around for 4 decades still puts out music of this quality, releases a double album, 21 songs. I'm mesmerized by the quality of this record. I don't know how they found all of this material or how they worked on all of this material, but there's not a single soft song across 21 songs. all of them have quality, all of them have something to offer, and that speaks volumes to the band, to their longevity, to their discography, to how long they've been around, and this album is perhaps the climax of that career. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I picked 2 from the first record and 1 from the second. The reason is simple. I prefer the first album. It's more organic, it's raw, it's live, it's rock and roll at its purest form. You really feel all the instruments, and it's more about the band and less about the filler that goes in once you start to add the orchestrations. I picked 1 song from the second one because that's not to say that the second record is not good. It's just that when I look at both, I prefer the first because that's what I want to hear live. I want to hear those guitars. I want to hear those drums, that bass, that voice. I want to feel a more analog sound coming out of the band, and that's exactly what you're going to get with that first record. That's why I picked 2 songs from that one and 1 song from the second. Now, the first song that I picked was End of Illusions, killer opening riff, and then is Pedal to the Metal. It's a track that musically and vocally just has this high octane vibe to it. The chorus is the only time where the song slows down, and by slowing it down, it allows itself to be a little bit more of an introspective moment, but the verses are ignited again, and the verses are super powerful. It allows the chorus to be more melodic, more reflective, and the verses are the ones that really push the song forward. It's a track that has room for everything. For a breakdown, for solo, overall great performance, it has it all. End of Illusions is a very complete track from that standpoint. Next we have Justice Will Be Mine. Immediately when I went through this 2 records for the first time, this was one of the songs that stood out immediately. It just has a lot of great elements to it. The first great element is outstanding drum sound. Powerful, heavy, not overpowering, filling in the gaps extremely well, creating a nice foundation for everything else that happens on this song, and the drums have life in them. You can see the substance. It's a sound that's alive. It's a sound that travels really well, but it's not thin. There's more texture to the drum sound on this song, and I thought that had a great impact on the track all around. It's also a track that has a little bit of a heavier guitar sound. So when you have that more thickness coming out of the drums and you have a heavier guitar sound, you put them both together, you end up with a song that's a little bit more robust, and obviously has an immediate impact just based on that alone. Then it gets you to the chorus. It's one of the hookiest chorus on this record. It's easy to remember, it's easy to sing along. It has a great the way the lyrics are designed in terms of how it takes you to that chorus. The chorus becomes the punchline, and because it becomes the punchline, it becomes even more hooky and even more catchy. It's a great track from that standpoint. Then you add some humming, you add that heavier mood in the verses with a more hopeful mood in the chorus. It's a very vibrant song, but a song that really lives around a very good and powerful vocal performance. Adding that humming was really good. I wish that humming had perhaps a little bit more layers to it to be even more impactful, and I think that would have driven the message home a little bit better. But the leading up to the chorus and using the chorus as the punchline, I thought that was pure genius. Last but definitely not least, Curse the Night. Now, this is on the second record, and because of it, immediately you're going to see that orchestrational side of the band take control and be a main core element, not just of this track, but of every track on this record. The song has a little bit of a ballad style song, because it's one of the softer tracks, it's one of the smoother tracks. It has a warm sound to it, but the way the orchestrations impact everything else, you start to see that more cinematic, that more theatrical side of the song coming through. It helps also to have more of a bombastic chorus, and I mean bombastic not because of an outstanding vocal performance that's hitting all of the right notes, more so in terms bombastic of how it takes you there, and then how the sound really blossoms once it gets into the chorus. Because vocally the chorus is super simple. There's not much to it. Curse the Night, that's the chorus. So there's really not much to it, but musically it really feels like it reached a climax every time you're approaching that chorus, and then that explosion that comes from it really makes the song feel more bombastic. The orchestrations add to that feeling as well, and obviously when you have a song that's very orchestrational based, you're always going to have that cinematic style, that theatrical style that has a clear impact on this song. Making it a ballad makes it even feel more so because it enhances all of the right attributes. This is it, Rage After Lifelines, out March 29th on Steam Hammer SPV. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section, and I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.